Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be talking about the game 1 of the final of the Samsung Cup 2025 between Liao Yuanhe 9P and Ding Hao 9P. Liao Yuanhe is playing as black and Ding Hao is playing as white. The game starts like this. Black plays out the offset 3-4 Fuseki, white approaches, and here black decides to put maximum pressure against white. This is definitely the most complex Joseki, right? Among all the pincers, the 2-space low pincer is very well known for its complexity. White plays the Keima, and black decides to not choose complexity in this game. Now, of course, black can go for the push and cut. There's nothing wrong with this, right? It leads to very, very complex variation. Now, I have made a few videos just talking about this Joseki alone. In that video, I said white extends, black extends, and I talk about the line with the Keima and the Kosumi. Today, I want to just quickly present a variation that I have never shown before. So white can slide into the corner and black needs to slide out. These are book moves. Here, white's another main variation actually is for white to directly jump out, poking at the elephant eye. Now you might be wondering, how is this even possible? Because your stone is here, then I can just cut you off. Well, that's exactly the main variation. Black is going to cut off. Looks like white is in trouble, but actually white can just drag out the stone and fight the two groups on the outside. Black needs to jump here. The reason black needs to jump here is because these 3 stones are actually weaker than the 2 stones over here, right? Because white is looking at the netting over here. Here, white's correct move is to simply extend, right? Instead of playing a Hane and letting black Hane, creating a cutting point, white's correct move is to extend out. And here, black has 2 options. One is to play the triangle, forcing white to play a move here, and then jump out, right? This is one of the main variations. The other one is simply for black to play the Keima. And now white is going to push like this and then kick black, right? So this is a very fierce, very intense variation actually for both sides. And one misstep could mean that you just lose the game. So it's worth spending some time to study this if you want to become good at the 2-space low pincer. It's a very complicated Joseki. All right, this is not what happened in the actual game. Black decides to crawl on the 3rd line, white extends, and black plays out the Keima. The next move, white decides to directly invade. This is the first time I'm seeing this move, right? I didn't know that you can play here. I know the 2 main variations. One is to play the cap on the 5th line. So here, black is going to respond with the Keima, and white can take that opportunity to approach this enclosure. So that will be an equal position moving forward. A more complex variation is actually for white to play a little closer to his formation. The problem with this move is black is going to attach. White Hane, black extends, and white pushes. Here, black keeps extending, and white will keep pushing. And at this point, the textbook move is for black to Hane. That leads to a very fierce cutting point by white. So this is a very fierce variation actually, right? White needs to somehow manage to make good use of this cutting stone and cause problem here for for black. So none of that happened. White just directly invaded this place, right? It looks very unconventional, but actually this is a good move that looks at 2 very good points. So for example, if black plays the 1-space jump, then white will come back and apply a lot of pressure against the stone over here. So this variation is pretty good for white. That's why in the actual game, black simply decided to jump out, which makes a lot of sense, right? This move, when you see it, it's just like, yeah, it makes so much sense because it cuts off the 2 groups and it's looking at the jump over here, causing a lot of problem for white's formation. Since black got this move, then white definitely has to punish that, punish the fact that black did not protect his corner. Here, there are a few variations. The first one is for black to play the Hane, but this Hane is not very good because white can cross cut. And the result of this is that, so even if without white stone over here, this is playable, right? Now white has a helping stone. This makes this variation very tough for black to handle. So we usually don't want to get cross cut like this when white has a helping stone over here. Now the other variation is for black to simply back down, which is an okay variation. It's very solid. If you don't know what's going on here, I highly recommend you to play like this. This is totally fun. White's follow-up is the jump, and here black can wedge. White Atari, black connects, And here, if white connects, that would be too aggressive because that leads to a very serious cutting point, and it's not very easy for white to handle this. So white's correct move is play very light. And this leads to black capturing the stone here and protecting the territory. We can see that white got a sente and a very nice formation. So white is quite happy with this result. Here, white can follow up with a very light move in the center, trying to support his 3 stones on the bottom right. In the actual game, black chooses the other variation, that is the hane on top. When white plays the hane, here black does not want a atari, right? Because that will go back to the same variation if you hane it on the bottom. So at this point, black simply connects. The idea is to sacrifice the corner to capture white's stone over here. White connects, and black pulls the stone out. A rock solid move, very well played by black. If black jumps down, this is also an interesting variation, but it's quite risky because white will immediately fight this. Black cuts, and white will hane. White can also think about extending out. Both are good variations. The idea is to sacrifice the corner to gain a lot of strength on the outside. Right? The result of this is it's probably not worth it if black has to spend a bunch of moves to capture the corner. Makes a lot of sense for black to simply extend out. And here white plays the keima, obviously living this giant corner. And at this point, black plays a beautiful move in the center, a very good shape, big keima with a jump stone, and also coordinating with the stone here to capture white over here. So here white does not want to immediately try to live this, right? If you live this, it's very miserable, first of all. But also, even if black doesn't play, right? Black can attach here. This is a very serious move. It means that you can't really hane anymore, right? If you just pull the stone back, I can also pull the stone back. And later on, I always have this very, in the very late game, I might have this type of move to try to kill, right? So this is not very good for white. So very important to not panic, right? It looks like a huge amount of territory, but it's very important to stay calm and just play good moves on the outside. Okay, so white plays a kusumi, and here black decides to poke at white here, right? Obviously, black has so many stones over here. It's time to punish white. White peeps, black connects, and the next move, white decided to play a very creative move over here. I personally don't quite understand this move. The only explanation I can give is that this is a very light move, trying to help out your stones over here. The idea from Ding Hao is he doesn't want to play heavy, right? If you play something like this, okay, black extends, and then you have to run, right? Doesn't matter how you run. Maybe you jump over here, but this is so not professional, right? This is so heavy. This group can be under attack, under a lot of pressure very quickly, right? Even if black just cap you on top, then you have to keep running. This is not very pleasant for white because you're not generating any points. So Ding Hao plays a very advanced idea, that is to play very light. And here black decides to cut white off, right? The way we punish our opponent for playing light is we try to claim the territory. Right? When we have a lot of territory, it's very easy for our opponent to panic. And in the actual game, Ding Hao follows up with the idea of playing very light, right? Not even caring about what's going on here. Just play a move on the outside. Building on the left side and also looking at invasion over here. Black plays a move to defend against this stone over here. And white kicks. Black extends. The reason black extends instead of hane is because he doesn't want the follow-up of this clamp, right? This clamp you pretty much have to connect. And then I can hane, and we can see white builds a very strong influence towards the left side. Liao Yuanhe plays rock solid in this game. Just extend, very patient. And the next move, Ding Hao comes back and try to fight over here. Here, black cannot directly cut. If black directly cut, that'd be falling into a trap because white can simply push like this. Looks like you can push through, but white will simply, just keep pushing with you and sacrifice the 2 stones. And all of a sudden, we see black is in a very awkward situation. White's next move, white can jump on the second line and connect back the stone, destroy everything that black has built here. But of course, if black blocks, then these guys are going to have some issues. So, black cannot play like that. In the actual game, black decides to attach over here, right? This is a very nice move to fix the problem that I was talking about. White plays the keima, And here, blacks can still not cut, right? If you cut, then white can simply play the Kosumi and just live your corner. And white gets a nice piece of territory while black lost the whole corner. So that's not acceptable. Black needs to attach, making sure white cannot live locally. And the next move, Ding Hao plays the Kosumi, still playing very, very light. Here it's also possible for white just to connect, right? So even if like this, white is very heavy, but at least black cannot get this territory. Like this is all destroyed, right? The only territory black has is over here. Ding Hao was probably worried that black can attack this group very effectively. Like for example, black can connect over here, and white hops out, and here black will just jump out as well. So white is definitely worried that this group might get heavy and be under attack, but I think it's going to be worth it for white to drag this out because the territory is just too big. All right, let's see what happened in the game. Ding Hao decides to play very light, but of course at this point Liao Yuanhe can just cut and then claim the whole corner. White Hane, black extends, and white now plays the Keima, trying to fix the cutting point. So white gets the build a little bit on the left side, but I think the amount that he lost over here is still very, it's still a lot, and it kind of hurts, right? Like in the game, it's so easy to panic when you lose this much territory. I would definitely have panicked, and I think in this game, maybe Ding Hao was also panicking a little bit, right? After seeing how much territory he has sacrificed. All right, the next move, I think the next move really shows that Liao Yuanhe is really happy with the amount of territory he was able to claim. Therefore, he plays a tiger's mouth. It's a very solid move to make sure that he gets to capture both pieces of the territory. Right? We can see this is a lot of territory, right? Easily 55 points and more. And how is white going to get the compensation back with all his stones on the outside? We're not sure yet. So I think at this point, white is definitely falling a little bit behind. The reason might have to do with the fact that he played a light move here. Right? It looks very advanced, but might not be the best move. And also the fact that he didn't connect here and try to save this piece of territory. And then he plays super light, but I think it's a little bit too generous to give so much territory. But the game is still playable for white. The next move, white decides to attach on the second line. It's a tesuji, trying to cause some aji inside black's territory. If black Hane inside, then white can pull the stone out. If black has to connect, and then white can play the Keima. And then this becomes a very tough life and death problem for black to solve. Probably white's going to live here, right? So this is definitely not a great idea for black. So black has to block on the outside. And it's very important to understand whether there is something in the corner or not, right? Like if white can live here, then that's a big deal. But if white just clean dead, then that's like bad news for white. So we really have to do some life and death over here. So let's take a look. If white pulls the stone back, black has to pull the stone back as well. And here, if white plays the tiger's mouth, this is a very tough life and death problem to solve, actually. Right? You can pause the video, especially if in the mid dan to high dan level, to think about how you want to kill here.
If you want to dive deeper and support what I'm doing, check out my Patreon. I regularly post exclusive high-quality content on Joseki's pro game breakdowns and even full courses, stuff you won't find anywhere else. The link is in the description. Thanks so much. Let's continue.
All right, so let's look at a few variations. If black just turns here, breaking the eye, that is not going to work because white can simply make a life with the eye-making move. Similarly, if black just captures, then white can Atari and then make a second eye, right? This is too easy for white. Now, if you thought about just peeping at the vital shape, this is a very good answer, but it's not the accurate answer, actually. So this move will kill white locally, right? If white plays the block here, which is the only move that white can play at this point, black can simply poke at here to break the eye. And then there's no way for white to live. However, the problem with this move is that leaves a problem because white can clamp. And this is a very annoying thing for black. If black plays the Atari, then white can just Atari like this, and this becomes a ko. Of course, black cannot accept that. So black's clean kill is to extend, but this leaves a lot of aji on the outside. White's jump is a sente, white extension is a sente, and here white can go for an attack over here, right? Trying to attack this group, by making use of the fact that white has a bunch of sente over here. That's quite difficult for black to deal with. If black blocks, then white can just cut like this. Black Atari, white extends, and black keeps pushing. And here they just play out a few more moves, and at this point we can see white can hane here, and that's the problem. The problem with this hane is that black cannot capture here, because that will allow white to capture the 2 stones and revive this whole thing. So black pretty much has to wedge here, making sure this is a tiger's mouth. But then white can Atari, and then play out the tiger's mouth. And we can see the result of this is white managed to drag out this group to counterattack black's 3 stones. And also, these guys later on might create some liberty issues for black, right? This could be a liberty fight inside, right? Even if white's going to lose, but white will get a really good squeeze. And that's not something that black wants to see. So you have successfully solved the local life and death, but leaves a lot of aji for white to exploit. So the correct move is actually for black to extend on the first line. This is a very, this is almost a ghost move, right? It's very hard to find. But if you have solved a lot of life and death problem, maybe you have found this one. So when black plays a move like this, it looks like it's not hurting anything. Like white's formation is not broken. Why are you playing a move on the first line? But actually after this move, white cannot live inside. First of all, let's look at the most dangerous move, right? For white to just make an eye. Looks like white is going to live, but black can simply jump. When white connects, black will also connect. It looks like white can live, right? It's 2i. But actually, when you look more carefully, black can squeeze over here. There's mi of squeezing in here and also squeezing here. So this is not really an eye, right? And you can capture the stone over here. And therefore, white is just dead. If white blocks here, trying to create some sort of ko, then black can simply push here, right? And we can see that there's still no way. If you block here, then I can peep in here. When you block, I can throw in, right? But we can see that this is definitely not an eye, right? When you capture, I can just squeeze and white is dead. And again, if you play something like this, black can also just jump in, right? When you make the second eye, I can squeeze over here. And we can see there's mi of me squeezing here and also squeezing over here, right? And we can see that white is just dead. All right, so that's a bit of a life and death. And the good thing about playing like this is that white only has this move as a sente. So this makes the push and cut a lot less serious, right? While previously white had the clamp and another stone, right? And that would cause a lot of problem in here. All right, so that's a little bit the life and death. Let's go back to the actual game. In the actual game, white just decided to play on the outside, which is very important right now, right? Because you can't live right now. Black now plays the 3-3, and white blocks, black crawls, and then they play out Joseki. And at this point, white comes back and play the tiger's mouth, trying to expand the left side to compensate for what he has lost on the right. Black extends on the second line, which is a very solid move. I absolutely love this move, and I really recommend this to my viewers. A lot of times, when you have a formation like this, you extend on the second line. The idea is to create a problem. You're trying to jump in, right, and break all the territory. And the other thing you're looking at is to play the keima. If you directly play the keima, then white can kick and hane, and this is going to cause a lot of problems. If you cut, I can just connect. And if you Atari, I can Atari and then hane on top. Because your 2 stones have very tight liberties, it's very difficult to fight here. So white is likely going to build this territory. So before we play the keima, we need the second line stone to support us for doing that. White now plays the push, and black decides to jump here because he's still worried about the aji in here, so he doesn't want to block directly. White now blocks on the second line to prevent the jump, and here black plays the keima. White attaches, black hanes, and white now kicks. Black extends, and white also extends towards the center. And we can see that white is also about to get a large amount of territory. But just at this point, the next move really shocked me. Black decides to invade over here, which is super deep. Right? I was thinking definitely something like this. Right? I would have definitely played this without question because I know that, I won't be captured. right? When you play here, obviously white's not going to defend like this, right? That's just not going to work. So white caps you on the outside, and that's a big problem. All right, so in the actual game, before white does all that, white decides to play an exchange here. This is all sente, black has to defend it. And here, white comes back, right? White made himself really strong here, and then he caps black on top. And we have a very classical invasion problem. How does black live in here? The next move, black follows the principle of counterattack, peeping at white first. White decides to extend the stone out. That's a very efficient way to fix the cutting point. And this also, if you just connect like this, it's very inefficient, and this leaves an obvious problem for white. But when white extends, this makes the attach a lot weaker, and also you're mitigating the cutting point. The next move, black plays the keima. I really like this move because this is following the principle of giving yourself as many options as possible. Next up, we're looking at a couple things, right? We're looking at the keima here, aiming at your cutting point. We're looking at a move like this, right? Trying to get more eye space. And we're also looking at a move like this, right? And this is also giving black a little bit more eye space while supporting him playing the jump and aiming at the cut. And this move also indirectly helps out with this attach over here, right? So this is a move that gives black many options, many follow-ups, which is a very nice move to play. In the actual game, white decides to kick here, which is to strengthen white's formation to prevent the counter attack. But here I have a question for my viewers. What would you do if white plays this very fierce move, right? And this is my first intuition as white. How would you deal with this move? Because this move looks like it's poking at black's shape, and it's really just choking black to death. Like, how do you manage this as black, right? I personally, I don't know the exact answer. I would feel very worried if white plays a move like this. But I want to leave it as like an open question, right? And let's kind of analyze what would you do. So usually when you encounter such a tough problem, there are two things that can help you get out of trouble. The first one is definitely your understanding, like your ideas. Are you following the principle of invasion? Are you counterattacking your opponent? Are you attaching to your opponent? Are you playing a move that gives you as many options as possible? Right? If you follow one or even multiple principles at the same move, then you will definitely feel okay. Right? So that's the idea part. But of course, there's also the tactic part, right? You have to be strong at reading, because when you counterattack, what if your opponent defends it well and you can't break through? And then you end up still getting killed, which happens a lot to my viewers who are in the mid dan to high dan level. So let's start with the idea, right? Like the first thing we need to look at is how do we counterattack, right? So here there are a few options. First of all, the obvious option is for us to poke here, right? This would be a very obvious counterattacking point. The problem is that maybe white can defend it in a very efficient way by playing the slide on the second line, right? Maybe they can play something like this. So we need to carefully consider, right, if this is a good option. Of course, the variation is very complex. I'm not going into it, but if you can think about the keima here, that's a huge, that's a huge accomplishment because you understand the principle of invasion because you're counter-attacking your opponent. Another move is to attach here, right? This is very plain and simple. We're following the principle of attaching, which is my favorite move in this particular scenario, because with this attach, it allows us to make shape and get us to safety. If white plays out the hane, then we can think about bumping into white like this, right? This was we start to make shape because we're trying to get into contact with white, and if white spends move to Atari us, we can connect here, causing some weaknesses in white's formation, and then when we get stronger, we can look at the attach and try to get ourselves out. Another way to play is probably to play the keima here. This is also a very good move because looking at the jump here, it supports our counterattack, right? If white gets rid of our eye space, then we can jump here, looking at the cutting point. And if white try to play the triangle, we just make sure we follow the principle. This is counterattacking white and attaching to our opponent, right? This should be the first move that comes to your mind because it follows so many of your principles, right? Here you can also think about just making an eye here. Maybe give yourself, a little bit of eye space before you go for the counterattack. That's also possible. Now, if white jumps on top, then the next move becomes quite obvious. We absolutely have to follow our principle of attaching to our opponent, right? And then even if you don't play accurately, you just pull the stone back, that can't be too bad because next move you're trying to hane here, right? And cause some problems. So if white defends that, then we can think about, attaching over here, right? Maybe we'll still be in danger, but invasion is a process, right? You can't solve the problem in one move. You just have to keep following the principles, and you just have to fight it out a lot of times. Another idea at this point is probably to cut here. That's also following the principle of counterattack. We're trying to cut here, right? So after white exchanged this, white has to go back. So with this cutting point, we can see that these stones get a lot weaker. This allows us to attach here, looking at counterattack. Right? So this would give you some ideas as to how you deal with this problem. Right? What I don't want my viewers to come up with is something like this, right? This would be not following any principles, right? You're not attaching to your opponent, you're not giving yourself a lot of options really, and you're not counterattacking anything. So at this point, white's gonna peep you, you connect, okay, white plays Kosumi, and all of a sudden you're in trouble because you're not following any principles, right? That's how you die. This is a typical example as how you die in here, right? All right, so that's just some fun exercise that we're doing. That's not what happened in the game. In the actual game, white decides to kick here first, preventing a counterattack. And here, Liao Yuanhe doesn't care about these two stones, obviously, and he plays another move. And at this point, white plays the hane and then jumps over here to make a good shape so black cannot play the counterattack. This turns out to be a slight mistake by white. A better move is for white to directly play the second line, breaking black's ice space on the bottom. Because next move we know black is going to play the Keima and live. So very important for us to take the shape away and cause maximum pressure and damage to black's formation. So here black likely is going to jump here, and then white can just fight it out. White can attach here, right? So black is trying to counterattack us, therefore we attach here, connect back to safety, while breaking black's ice space. So black likely is going to play something like this, and then they're just going to fight it out. Still a more or less equal game moving forward. Well, slightly better for black probably at this point. All right, in the actual game, white missed that opportunity. He just played the jump here. But then this allows black to live too easily. We can see black is way too comfortable here. The next move, white captures two stones, and black pushes on top, white hanes, and black plays another Keima. We can see black not only lived, but with a lot of territory now. So at this point, Ding Hao realized that he hasn't done so well when it comes to attacking over here. Therefore, he decides to go for a very fierce fight over here. Black Atari, white extends, and black blocks. Here, white has to push down, right? White cannot just connect here and let black Atari. So white didn't get anything, right? Except capturing the stone here. Black is all connected. So that's not good for white. White has to push through, cause maximum problem. Black connects, white turns here, and black plays the triangle. The reason is because you can't really hane here, right? Because white can Atari and an Atari, right? And that's kind of game over for black, because if black turns, then black will get ladder. It does look like a very tough ladder to read, so let's just play it out. We can see that at this point, when black tries to run, white can Atari. When black pushes through, then we can Atari this way, and then ladder black, right? And then that's just game over. All right, so that ladder is quite hard to read because it does feel like black has supporting stones, but they don't really work. That's why in the actual game, black plays the triangle, white pushes through, black extends, and white keeps pushing. Black extends, and white keeps pushing, right? So Ding Hao is really going crazy here, just playing a bunch of second line to cause damage for black. And at this point, black decides to capture the stone over here, looking at the push and aiming at both cutting points. I'm not sure if this was an inaccuracy. Maybe black should just keep extending here, right? That's how I feel after analyzing the game. When black captures here, this actually gives white an opportunity to play the hane. This is not what was played, but I think white should definitely have played this move, because this is a huge move that gets your group very comfortable and tightening black's liberty here. If black tries to push through, then white can very flexibly sacrifice these 4 stones. Right? This is a lot of points, obviously, because that also kills off the monkey jump, that also kills off the 2-2 hane. So black gained quite a lot of points, but white can use that opportunity to counterattack black over here. And this would make the game very chaotic and gives a lot of chances to white to come back into this game, actually. So that is a very big opportunity right now for white to play the Hane. But white did not play that. White decides to connect here. This would fix the cutting problem, right? If black tries to cut, then white can fix it with the bamboo here, right? If you push and cut, then I can Atari. If you connect, then I can turn and kill the stone here, and white has no problem. But when black plays the extension here, white still has to play the second line move. That's a very miserable thing, because now black can jump, white extends, and black now pushes on top, hurting the stone at the start point. White blocks, and now black pushes through on the second line. Here, if white Atari, then black will sacrifice the two stones and just Atari, and then jump out, right? So we can see that these two stones are not very important. So capturing it, it's not something crazy. So black can just play very flexible, and later on looking at jumping in. Or black can simply jumping right now. This is also a very big move. So like this, white will be behind in this game for sure. This is why white didn't go for the fight. White just block over here. Black now jumps to fix the cutting point, and white plays the Hane. Black Hane, white Hane, and black double Hane. Very flexible way of playing, right? If you just extend, that will be not so great because white can push, and then looking at the Hane here. But when black plays the double Hane, white captures the three stones over here, but that's just some points. Black gets to Atari and then capture the stone in the center, and this capture has a lot influence towards the territory over here. White plays the jump, that's a sente, black has to connect, and white decides to cause problem over here. Black blocks, and white pulls the stone out. If white just cuts here, then black Hane, and the liberty fight is going to be black kills white. So white cannot cut immediately, therefore white extends the stone out. Black decides to play safe and just connect. White Atari and black turns. White connects, black connects, and white connects. And at this point, black uses the second line move to get back home. White pushes, black blocks, and white plays the extension. The reason white needs to add a move is to prevent the cutting point. So white plays the extension. Because the squeezing move here is a sente, that means this cutting point is gone. Black extends out, and here white decides to play the Kosumi. I think this was probably at this point, white is already behind, but I think white should still play patient and just wait for his opportunity by jumping over here. Kosumi here, I think, is a mistake, and I can kind of understand why it's a mistake, because Kosumi here doesn't achieve much, right? You're not trying to break any territory, and you're not protecting any territory. So what is the point of playing the Kosumi? I didn't understand this move by white. Black here is rock solid. This is also a nuclear center, so playing a Kosumi here instead of protecting your territory, I just didn't understand the purpose of this move. But anyway, maybe at this point Ding Hao was feeling very hopeless because, first of all, black kept a lot of territory over here, and black also lived very comfortably here, and all what he did is a bunch of second line, then capture the three stones here. So he didn't feel good about this game, and at this point, he probably lost patience. But even if he plays the correct move here, still a leading game for black, right? And then the end game is not too hard in this game, I would assume, and it's still very difficult for white to come back. But at least he should have played correctly here, protect some territory on the bottom. When white plays the Kosumi, that leaves a very obvious poking point for black, and now you don't have any territory. White jumps out. You can see that these moves are not very valuable because there's, maybe white is trying to build a little bit here, but these two moves don't generate much value. Black comes into white's moyo, and nothing you can do. Black is way too thick. White bumps into black. Black plays the second line extension. It's very good for points. White pushes on top. Black attaches, white Hane's, black extends. White has to be very careful because if you just capture the stone here, then your entire group is under trouble. Or in trouble, should I say. All right, so white has to connect home, and we can see that, 1, 2, 3, not doing anything because black is rock solid. Black pulls the stone back, and white Hane connect. That's a very big endgame. And black decides to capture the stone over here. Or else white is going to drag the stone and cause some liberty issues. So black kills the stone off. And white bumps into black. Black blocks. White pushes here. Black exchange one move first. And white crawls. Black honeys. And white needs to connect. It looks like when black pushes through, there's tiger's mouth. But if you don't answer this, right, and you just play something like this, then, well, there's so many ways for black to cut white. Right? First of all, this would just end the game, right, instantly. So the double tiger's mouth is not really safe. So white had to connect here. Black comes back and block. White now squeeze, and then black plays the Kosumi in the center, right? This is not really a sente. White pushes through, black blocks, white jumps, and black plays the Kosumi, connecting the two stones. White Kosumi, black connects, and white Hane on the second line. Very big endgame. Black blocks, white Hane, black extends, and white now decides to cut over here. Black connects, and black crawls on the second line. And this ends up to be the last move of the game. At this point, Ding Hao decided to resign. The reason Ding Hao resigned is just because he doesn't have enough territory. Black is way ahead in terms of territory. The liberty fight here doesn't have any, there's no chance for white. White has 3, black has 5. Even if white plays a move, black doesn't even answer, right? This is a gote. So, yeah, so there's no chance for white in this game, which means that Liao Yuanhe is 1-0 in this final, and they will play the game 2 soon. And when that game is done, I will put the commentary on my channel. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe if you want to, if you don't want to miss any future videos. I hope you guys enjoy the game, and I'll see you guys in the next one.